Hello and welcome to Mickeyology, where we take Disney a little too seriously. I'm Austin Rathall, and today we're examining a story Disney has adapted not once, not twice, but 3 times. Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Disney first adapted this story in 1983 when they produced the half-hour cartoon Mickey's Christmas Carol, with classic Disney characters playing the characters from the book. Then in 1992 they produced the Muppet Christmas Carol, with the Muppets playing the characters from the book, alongside Michael Caine as Scrooge. Finally, in 2009 they released A Christmas Carol, with actors playing the characters from the book via motion capture CGI, because why do a straightforward live-action adaptation when you can have cartoons, puppets, or video game NPCs do the acting? I'm willing to bet that you know the story of A Christmas Carol. But if you've never actually read the book, or if it's been a while, you may wonder how faithful each of these Disney movies are to the original. To answer that question, I'm going to examine each one and rate it on how faithful it is to the book. I'll rate each movie in 4 categories. Number 1, characters. How many of the book's characters does the movie include, and how similar are they to their literary versions? Number 2, language. How much of Dickens' narration and dialogue makes it into the movie? Number 3, plot. How closely does the movie follow the book's plot, and how much new material does it add? Number 4, the feel. How well does the movie convey the book's atmosphere, messages, and overall vibe? I'll score each category out of 10, and the average of the 4 scores will give the movie its final score. At the end, we'll see how the films rank against each other. Before we begin, let me remind you that I'm not ranking these movies on quality. I'm guessing you are fond of at least one of these movies. I'm fond of them as well. So please remember that if I give your favorite a low score, I'm not saying it's bad. There's obviously much more to a movie's quality than how faithful it is to its source material. I also realize that this process is subjective, and I'm not the only one who's read this book, so please feel free to chime in down in the comments and tell us how you would score each film in terms of its faithfulness to the novel. With that, let's get started. Mickey's Christmas Carol features all the main characters from the book, each one played by a classic Disney character. Scrooge McDuck leads the cast as Ebenezer Scrooge. This Scrooge is more sarcastic than the Dickens version, and unlike the miserable miser from the book, this Scrooge seems to enjoy being cruel and greedy.
80% interest, compounded daily. Money, money, money.
Mickey Mouse plays Bob Cratchit, and while he captures the character's everyman quality, he's also more of a doormat than the Bob of the book. Unlike the original, Mickey's Bob is content taking only half of Christmas Day off, and he does his boss's laundry on top of all his other work.
Here's another bundle of shirts for you. Yes, sir!
Goofy plays Marley's ghost, and needless to say, he's not scary. He's goofy. Not only is he not as frightening as the book's Marley, but it's also hard to imagine that he'd ever be the kind of greedy menace Scrooge is, or that Scrooge would ever put up with such a bumbling partner. Jiminy Cricket plays the ghost of Christmas Past, which fits him well since he's basically serving as a conscience, like he did in Pinocchio. Willie the Giant from Mickey and the Beanstalk plays the ghost of Christmas Present, which makes the character a lot dopier than the literary version. The ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is played by Pete the Cat, who makes some drastic departures from the book. He smokes a cigar, removes his hood, and seems to be trying to scare and threaten Scrooge rather than help him. The rest of the characters are pretty faithful to the original, though they often have less to do. Overall, I give the characters in this version a 6 out of 10. The cartoon uses very little of Dickens' language. There are a few lines that are modified from the original, but it's mostly modern American English written for the film.
I'm looking forward to that wonderful meal of yours.
Overall, I give the language 4 out of 10. Mickey's Christmas Carol is very short. It trims the story down to the basics and races through it in 26 minutes. Still, it covers all the crucial scenes. Those scenes are played in a cartoonish style though, with plenty of slapstick. We also miss seeing Scrooge's school days, much of the Cratchit scenes, and the selling of Scrooge's goods after his death. Despite making these cuts, Disney adds some new moments to the story. In this version, the ghost of Christmas Future dangles Scrooge above a fiery grave. We also see the moment that Scrooge meets Belle at Fezziwig's party, and Belle is played by Daisy Duck. By the way, does this seem like a weird choice to anyone else? I mean, Daisy is Donald's girlfriend, and here she is kissing Uncle Scrooge. Even if you consider this story existing in a separate universe from all the rest of Disney's cartoons, I still find it off-putting. Disney does make one touching addition to the ending though, when Scrooge not only raises Bob Cratchit's salary, but also promotes him to partner. Overall, this version is just too short to be as faithful as the other versions, so I give the plot 4 out of 10. While the cartoon has the same overall plot as the source material, it feels more like a celebration of Disney animation than an attempt to faithfully adapt the Dickens novel. There are classic Disney characters everywhere you look, including many in minor roles and cameos. That makes for a really fun watch, but it doesn't let you forget that you're watching a Disney short. It always feels like you're watching Disney characters playing other characters, which doesn't immerse you in the story the way the book does. The cartoonish approach gives the story less of the emotional depth and seriousness of the book, and the short runtime doesn't allow the story to be as fleshed out as the original. The same message is there, it just doesn't resonate the same way. Overall, I give the feel of this version a 6 out of 10. Overall, I'll give Mickey's Christmas Carol a final score of 6 out of 10. On to the Muppets. The Muppets version contains all the central characters from the book, with Muppets playing many of them. Scrooge, however, is human, played by Michael Caine. Caine gives an excellent, sincere performance. In the book, Scrooge begins the story as a cold-hearted miser, but he demonstrates grief and penitence throughout his journey, and Caine performs those emotions especially well. The rest of the characters are pretty faithful to their literary versions, including the Muppets. Even Miss Piggy is surprisingly restrained as Mrs. Cratchit, though her feistiness does shine through occasionally.
And therefore, I'm about to raise your salary.
Oh, and I am about to raise you right off the pavement and onto...
One character they don't faithfully adapt is Jacob Marley. The movie gives us two Marleys, Jacob and Robert, played by Statler and Waldorf. They aren't as penitent as the book's Marley. They seem to grow briefly nostalgic about the way they mistreated and mocked others.
There was the year we evicted the entire orphanage. I remember the little tykes all standing in the snowbank with their little frostbitten teddy bears.
Their appearance is also briefer and less spooky than Marley's visit is in the book. The other spirits behave in book-accurate ways, and two of the three spirits look book-accurate, but the Ghost of Christmas Past is a sort of ghostly doll figure with the voice of a little girl, rather than the angelic man that Dickens describes.
I can remember nearly 1900 years. I am the ghost of Christmas past.
This movie has one character that neither of the others has, though, Charles Dickens himself, played by Gonzo. While Dickens isn't a character in the original novel, he does feel like one at times, since he draws attention to himself as narrator. For example, near the beginning he says that Marley was dead as a doornail, and then he goes on a tangent about why the saying should be dead as a coffin nail instead. With lines like that, inserting Dickens as a character doesn't actually feel that out of place. Of course, Gonzo is accompanied by Rizzo, who is just Rizzo. He has nothing to do with the book.
I am here to tell the story.
And I am here for the food.
Overall, I give the characters in this version a score of 7 out of 10. The Muppet Christmas Carol features many quotes from the book, and Gonzo gets to recite a lot of the prose that goes unspoken in other versions.
He was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, clutching, covetous old sinner.
However, if you listen carefully, you'll notice much of the narration and dialogue is modified or abridged. There's also plenty of modern language, as well as jokes and song lyrics mixed in with the original text. So overall, I give the language in this version a score of 6 out of 10. The movie's plot follows that of the book, but with some Muppet antics peppered in, especially from Gonzo and Rizzo.
Hey, light the lamp, not the rat, light the lamp, not the rat!
My apologies!
There are a few added scenes as well, like when Scrooge once again meets Belle at Fezziwig's party, and when the Ghost of Christmas Present changes size, and a nice moment when Beaker gives Scrooge a scarf.
A gift? A gift for me?
Like the others, this movie also leaves out some scenes from the book. Overall, I give the plot a score of 8 out of 10. This version tones down the spookiness of the novel. The creepiest scenes are the ones involving the Ghost of Christmas Future, of course, including one in which people sell off Scrooge's belongings to a man named Old Joe after Scrooge dies. The movie even turns Joe into a spider. However, even these scenes come off pretty mild. However, the movie doesn't shy away from the book's sadness. After the death of Tiny Tim, Kermit and Miss Piggy play their mourning scene so straight that you can't help but feel sorry for them, even though they're a pig and a frog, and how did they have children in the first place? While the movie is softer and lacks a bit of the book's edge, the book's warmth and heart are all there plus some. While the songs aren't from the original text, they convey ideas and emotions that are straight from the text. The message of the story comes through loud and clear. So overall, I give the feel of the movie a 9 out of 10. Averaging these scores together gives The Muppet Christmas Carol a final score of 7.5 out of 10. Now on to the weird one. The Jim Carrey version of A Christmas Carol features almost every major and minor character from the book, with Jim Carrey in the role of Scrooge. Though Carrey's performance might not be your favorite, it is a valid interpretation of the text. Dickens calls Scrooge a clutching, covetous old sinner, and Carrey's Scrooge captures that perfectly. The beginning shows him literally pinching pennies, or tuppence. The other characters, like Gary Oldman's Bob Cratchit, are played by actors rather than Disney characters or Muppets, which by default allows them to be more like their literary versions and to play their parts more straight. The first two spirits are also very faithful to the book. The ghost of Christmas Past is male, with light shining from his head, and he carries this candle snuffer cap that Dickens describes in the book. He even changes his face to resemble characters from Scrooge's past, which also comes from the book. The ghost of Christmas Present matches Dickens' description pretty much perfectly. The ghost of Christmas Future is a little less faithful. Unlike the book-accurate hooded figure from the Muppet version, this ghost is a literal shadow who sometimes morphs into a skeletal ghoul. Everyone else is pretty much exactly as Dickens describes. Overall, I give the characters in this version a 10 out of 10. Many lines from this movie come straight from the book. It's not always a word-for-word copy. Some of the dialogue is new or modified, but overall it skews really close to the original text. While there's no narrator in this version, Bob Cratchit narrates the very end with lines taken from the book's ending narration. Overall, I give the language in this version a 9 out of 10. This movie is the longest of the bunch, and it includes several scenes from the book the others omit. For example, after Marley's visit, Scrooge sees a whole crowd of ghosts outside his window. We see Scrooge extinguish the ghost of Christmas Past with his cap. We see the two frightening children, Ignorance and Want, emerge from the robe of Christmas Present, and we see Scrooge's dead body concealed on a bed. The movie even adds small touches from the book, like when a dog pulls his blind master out of Scrooge's path. While a few of the book scenes still don't make it in, the filmmakers clearly did their homework and they knew this book inside and out when they were adapting it. However, the movie also adds some scenes. Like both the other versions, Scrooge meets Belle at Fezziwig's dance, and as in Mickey's Christmas Carol, this version dangles Scrooge above an open grave. Some other scenes depart much farther from the book than these. There are some gory gags involving Marley. Scrooge flies through the air on the ghost of Christmas Past's cap like it's a rocket. The ghost of Christmas Present has some kind of heart attack standing inside a clock before becoming a skeleton, and Scrooge shrinks down to 1 inch tall and flees a shadow coach that chases him through the London streets. Overall, I give the plot for this version an 8 out of 10. Although the script is painstakingly faithful to the book, the finished film doesn't leave you with quite the same feeling that the book does. This movie feels more like the sum of the book's parts, and it's often less immersive. The motion capture animation is responsible for some of that, since the characters often sink into the famous uncanny valley, preventing you from connecting with them the same way you would with flesh and blood actors. The camera work makes it even harder to connect with the story, since it often flies around to shoot things from physically impossible angles. The world on screen is very Dickensian and authentic, but when you feel like you're seeing it from the seat of a roller coaster, it loses some of its realism. Add a few characters performing superhuman stunts occasionally, and the whole thing feels a bit off. Dickens took care to make the world of the novel feel grounded. He begins by saying we must remember that Marley was dead, quote, or nothing wonderful can come of the story I am going to relate. The movie, on the other hand, plays with physics and camera angles so much that the world feels less grounded, and thereby the story feels less wonderful. The added scenes throw off the feel of the movie even more, especially the creepy and gross out scenes. While this movie retains more of the book's darkness than the others, it leans into the dark moments so hard that it's jarring, and it takes a little bit away from the story's warmth. Still, despite the movie's many shortcomings, it does show a very authentic Dickensian world. It adds the dark edge that the others lack, and it preserves so much of the source material that you still walk away with some of the same feeling and many of the same messages and warnings that the book provides. It's just not all as cohesive as the original. Overall, I give the feel of the movie a 7 out of 10. Averaging these scores gives A Christmas Carol an overall score of 8.5 out of 10. That puts Mickey's Christmas Carol in 3rd place, The Muppet Christmas Carol in 2nd, and the 2009 Jim Carrey version takes 1st place as the most faithful Disney adaptation. So there you have it. That is how each of Disney's Christmas Carol adaptations compares to the original book. If you've read the book, let us know in the comments how you would rate each adaptation in terms of its faithfulness, and even if you haven't read the book, let us know which adaptation is your favorite. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel before you go, and as always, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.